Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Krupa from MarkLogic, and welcome to MarkLogic World 2020. I'm here with Dan Wilson from MuleSoft, as well as Clay Redding, also from MarkLogic. Welcome, Dan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as MuleSoft?
Thanks so much, Ken. Great to be here. MuleSoft, as people hopefully know, is a leading provider for data integration and API management. We've been working closely with MarkLogic. I myself focus on our strategic partnerships in the data ecosystem. And so we're excited to show you guys what we've been working on with Clay and the rest of the MarkLogic team.
Great, Dan. And we're really grateful for you collaborating with us. You know, there are three trends I think about today in the tech marketplace that are relevant to the topics we're going to cover today. One is cloud, obviously. The other is APIs. And then the third is data itself. Can you give us your perspective on those three?
Yeah, so there are really three core parts of the overall digital transformation that companies have been going through in recent years. Those, if anything, that's just been accelerated by the current COVID-19 crisis. If you think about how people are deploying more and more SaaS applications, seeing their data siloed in different places, really the only way that they have to continue innovating around this complexity is taking a more API-led approach and opening up systems and making data more accessible. The perfect complement to that is really how we see ourselves partnering with MarkLogic, because that new integration approach requires also a new approach to data management.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. And I think I chuckle myself. I think it's funny how we talk about things like APIs and data for geeks like us that have always been around as trending. But it's really about making them mainstream, and the cloud being part of that, mainstreaming those things to solve problems, to make data accessible to everyday individuals. In fact, that's the topic we're going to be talking about today, or one of the topics we're going to be talking about today, which is the ONC Cures Act. And the ONC Cures Act is a requirement that mandates healthcare providers make data available to patients. And when you consider that this data has to be protected, has to be secured, as well as it has to be shared and of quality, things like APIs and good data management become important. So what we're going to see today, what Clay is going to show us, is a patient 360 demo focusing on this particular mandate as the business case. Okay, over to you, Clay.
And today we'll be building a FHIR Patient 360-degree view data hub entirely in the cloud using MuleSoft's Anypoint platform and their Cloud Hub infrastructure as a service, MarkLogic's Data Hub service, which is also infrastructure as a service, and our data format will be FHIR. FHIR is a burgeoning standard for electronic health data interchange for payers, patients, and providers alike. FHIR stands for Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources, and it is a standard for interoperability and transmission of electronic health information promoted by Health Level 7 International. It's commonly used all over the world, but in the USA in particular, there's a new call to action. It's actually being mandated as part of compliance with the ONC Cures Act final rule, which is a rule passed by Congress recently that basically states that patients can freely retrieve all of their data, whether structured or unstructured. This is meant to drive innovation of new applications to provide newer systems in front of healthcare providers, healthcare payers, to allow for the secure exchange of electronic health information between parties. So let's talk about the tools we'll be using. To start with, we'll be using MuleSoft's Cloud Hub and their Anypoint platform. With MuleSoft, you can create API-led integration workflows with the MuleSoft Anypoint platform. Any of those workflows can be deployed as applications within minutes, up and running on MuleSoft's Cloud Hub, which is their cloud-based infrastructure as a service offering. For a high-level view of the MuleSoft Cloud Hub architecture, we start with Runtime Manager Console, which is found within Anypoint Design Center. Runtime Manager Console is used to take any APIs and workflows we've defined and deploy them essentially onto the worker cloud, which runs on top of AWS. Here we take our APIs, any specific virtual private clouds that we spin up with Cloud Hub, and deploy them right over into AWS. From there, any of your own AWS cloud-based applications, or even your on-prem applications, have access to the worker cloud and can call MuleSoft directly. We'll also be using the MarkLogic Connector for MuleSoft. The MarkLogic Connector for MuleSoft allows for fast, easy integration within your MuleSoft workflows directly to MarkLogic and particularly Data Hub Service. You can find the MarkLogic Connector for MuleSoft right on MuleSoft's Anypoint Exchange. Anypoint Exchange is a community repository of MuleSoft resources such as APIs, connectors, examples, what have you. And we'll be using MarkLogic's Data Hub service to bring together our myriad of healthcare information sources to produce our patient 360-degree FHIR-based view. MarkLogic Data Hub service is a cloud service that runs in Azure or AWS and deploys within minutes for a predictable, low-cost delivery. To bring the entire architecture into view, from the customer data center, they can load, operate, and analyze from right on-prem. Calling MuleSoft in the MuleSoft Cloud Hub, they can make requests directly against the MuleSoft API gateway as well as the MuleSoft worker instances. The MuleSoft worker instances will work directly against MarkLogic Data Hub service and the various EC2 nodes that work for curation, operation, analytics, and then of course our data nodes and the underlying data substructure used within AWS. It's important to note MuleSoft Cloud Hub and MarkLogic Data Hub service run in private, secure VPCs, which will bridge together through VPC peering. VPC peering will also happen back to the customer data center so that there's one seamless network experience. So let's talk a little bit about the use case we'll be building today. As we mentioned with the Cures Act, a patient will be able to get free access to their health information. So our use case follows accordingly. A patient needs to get their healthcare information in order to share it with another provider specialist. And we will achieve this through MuleSoft support for FHIR REST APIs, which will sit over top of MarkLogic. MarkLogic, of course, has search and document REST APIs to deliver the FHIR patient and bundle resources that the Data Hub will help generate. This patient also expects a comprehensive view of their data, including provider visit and lab notes detailing all medical history. The Data Hub will help us deliver this canonicalized and mastered FHIR view of our patient data from structured and unstructured data sources alike. And in order to build that FHIR patient view, we need to work with the types of systems commonly found at providers and payers alike. That's often centered around patients, but there's a lot more to it. There's claims data, there's coverage data, imaging studies, allergies, immunizations, and even that unstructured text that we talked about, which you can see over at the far right. Electronic medical records, lab notes, visit notes. This type of unstructured text is often critical to helping a patient analyze and understand what's going on, but is often left out of these types of systems just because of their unstructured nature. With the help of MuleSoft integrating all of this data into MarkLogic Data Hub, we'll be able to use that unstructured data and provide this patient 360-degree view. Now let's have a look at what our demo will entail. Here's a bigger picture of how it all works. MuleSoft is going to be used to grab our source data, whether structured or unstructured, and using REST APIs that we'll design inside of Anypoint Design Center, and workflows that we'll design there as well. We will move that data over into MarkLogic Data Hub service, as is, where we can now begin curating the data according to our defined entity models within Data Hub. This allows us to easily map data for downstream transformations to help build up that canonicalized view, and to begin the process of smart mastering. Smart mastering functionality within Data Hub plays a vital role, because what if there are duplicate records in different source systems? For example, many of our source records have different spellings and versions of the same name, some with diacritics, some without, but they're all the same person. Or they have slightly different mailing addresses or zip code differences. Absent the use of smart mastering, the MuleSoft logic to match and merge those records will also have to be built into the APIs and executed for each request, which could slow responses. The MarkLogic Data Hub complements MuleSoft by reducing the need to reprocess data, simplifying data retrieval of unified views of business data, providing powerful tools for analytics and data aggregations, and adding government-grade and HIPAA-compliant security to persisted data to complement MuleSoft's robust security offerings on in-flight data at the API layer. It is important to note that the source systems remain the system of record. MarkLogic's role in this architecture is the system of insight and engagement. That is, helping to get business-critical, canonical views of data across systems more easily and securely, all while helping to minimize the pattern of transformations happening upon each API request. The strength of MarkLogic's Data Hub lies in easing access and retrieval for analytics, reporting, and mastering data from different sources. The canonicalized, mastered view of data across business entities for insights is what drives that engagement downstream. Since MuleSoft APIs and flows will be at the heart of everything we're doing, let's have a deeper look at Anypoint Platform. To start with, let's look at Anypoint Design Center. It's used to define and design RESTful APIs that are standards-based using the RAML or the Open API specification. Once we've designed those, we can actually scaffold our flows. And once we've defined our flows, we can deploy those onto Cloud Hub using Anypoint Platform's Runtime Manager. Runtime Manager allows us to govern basically how we're going to deploy our instances and interoperate with them once they're operational. So now let's have a look at Design Center. Design Center allows us to set up projects, whether they are Mule applications or flows, or API specifications. Let's have a look at the Fire MLTV API specification that was created for this effort. Here's our Fire API specification. First, we create a Fire security scheme, which is an OAuth 2 implementation, which is going to be required by the Cures Act. Our endpoints include a harmonize endpoint to run our harmonization flows. For ingestion, we have a CSV ingest flow. Since a lot of our data will be coming from structured data, CSV makes perfect sense for import into MarkLogic. We'll also have a zip ingest functionality, which will allow us to import zipped up JSON and our plain text medical history electronic medical records. We'll have a job report endpoint to basically be able to check on the status of any running jobs within MarkLogic Data Hub. And we'll also have a list S3 endpoint. Since we don't have all of the source systems actually available to us for demonstration, MuleSoft will use S3 as a landing zone to simulate incoming data from the source systems. Over on the right, you can see the auto-generated RAML text being generated. And if you prefer to use OAS or Swagger, you can have a view of that too. This is all downloadable and exportable into other tools, but you can also use it to scaffold up working flows and working applications directly inside of Cloud Hub. There's even a mocking service so that you can test your APIs before data even has a chance to flow through them. So let's drill in a bit on the list S3 endpoint. As we mentioned, MuleSoft will be staging any data from our sources into S3 for asynchronous load into MarkLogic. So we need an endpoint that will list the changed contents within S3 so that we know what to ingest. If we have a look at the query parameters for list S3, there's bucket name, which tells us the name of the S3 bucket to monitor. There's a directory or path parameter, which tells us the path to look for. And then also there's a since parameter. And that since parameter takes a date time and lists any contents newer than that provided date time as the basis for what to ingest. So let's use our APIs to now scaffold a set of flows to operate against. Here we have the list S3 objects endpoint. We started all off with v1 list S3, which is an HTTP listener provided by MuleSoft. It is the recipient of any HTTP calls that come in. It acts as a trigger to then invoke or call over to S3 for the desired bucket name, the directory and path, and our since timestamp to govern which files will be considered for ingest into MarkLogic. In fact, we can go grab the URL right now and head straight over to a browser tab, load it right up. And here we can see our endpoint, v1 list s3 with our bucket name parameter, the directory, and the timestamp. And we list the files ready to be ingested into MarkLogic.
It's good to quickly note that in addition to Anypoint Design Center, you can also design all of your same APIs and flows and run the same applications right on your workstation with a downloadable tool called Anypoint Studio. Anypoint Studio is an Eclipse-based IDE that features the Mule runtime engine so that you can design your flows. As you see here, I have my ingest CSV flows, my ingest zip flow, and run it right on top of your laptop. This allows you to quickly test your applications before you commit to deploying them in the cloud. However, when you are happy with your applications and want to push them to the cloud, you can do so right here inside of Anypoint Studio by going to Anypoint Platform and deploy to Cloud Hub.
Okay, so now our application is up and running, and we can see that directly in the log output here, that our application is deployed, and the status is that it's running. What this does is runs the application directly on top of your workstation. And we can verify this by actually going over and trying to run our list s3 endpoint. So here you can notice that I'm calling against my local host running on port 8081. You have total control over the port numbers or any other configurations you want to make the HTTP listeners on your local host have, but in essence, it works the exact same way. In here, you can see we get the same list s3 response that we had before running in Cloud Hub.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Clay. That was great. So we had a good overview, as well as we got to see MuleSoft's Design Center and how to make APIs accessible to folks. So Dan, expand a little bit or sum it up. Tell us what we just saw.
So we saw a number of key parts that have made MuleSoft so critical to addressing these kinds of data sharing scenarios. If you take a step back, when we talk to our customers in the last few months, they're really looking to do three things: be responsive, be efficient, and then be resilient. The responsiveness comes from being able to open up and make data more accessible. So Clay talked a little bit about all the different connectors that come out of the box with MuleSoft to bring in data from cloud and on-prem systems. He alluded to some of the reuse, which is a key part of taking a true API-led approach. So customers are going to be able to innovate with the clock speed they need to nowadays. Reuse and increasing productivity of IT organizations and developers becomes incredibly important. And then finally, resilience. A lot of this is about future-proofing your platforms because, as we know, new services, new applications, and new data sources are coming in all the time. And so the flexibility and the breadth of the MuleSoft platform are all key to help address those three priorities that IT organizations have today.
Oh, great. Yeah. And those are all great points. And juggling those three can sometimes be a challenge, right? The flexibility to deal with change, but keeping things resilient, just to name a couple. We're really appreciative of what you guys are able to bring to the table because, for us, you represent the first mile or two that is so critical to making data accessible. And that once that data is accessible, there are things that MarkLogic can pick up and do with it. But making it available in the first place is very important. So really good stuff there. So now we're going to turn it back over to Clay, and he's going to continue on with the demo where he's going to show a little bit more about the MarkLogic portion, the Data Hub piece, where now that the data has been made available via APIs from MuleSoft, MarkLogic picking it up and taking it through the process of the Data Hub. So back over to you, Clay.
And now let's take a look at the MarkLogic Data Hub side. Quick Start is primarily used for local development. It makes for a convenient front end to our hub in that it helps users new to MarkLogic to find the entities and flows that will build our canonical views. And it can even deploy data locally. It's backed by the MarkLogic Gradle effort, and Gradle is the tried and true way to deploy a data hub in any formal environment, especially Data Hub service. Upon signing in, we get a dashboard view of our databases, including our staging database where MuleSoft will first ingest our data, our final database, where our final canonicalized views will be accessible after harmonization, also orchestrated by MuleSoft, and also our jobs database. The jobs database is where we store provenance and job-related information, including batch success and failures, which we'll track later on in our MuleSoft flows. Our entities view gives a look at entities and properties we've defined to help mapping and transformation downstream. Indexes, cardinalities, relationships, etc. can all be defined here. These are used to also define SQL and Sparkle projected views of the data that downstream BI analytics tools can leverage. The Manage Flows screen is an entry to defining and running our flows. Flows are usually tied to our defined entities and actually execute the mapping, mastering, and other transformation steps needed to achieve our canonical views. It shows job-related information, such as the last jobs that ran for each flow and their outcome. You can run flows directly from here, but we'll be doing this a bit later within our MuleSoft v1 Harmonize endpoint and flow. Let's drill in on our Patient 360 flow. A flow is made of steps such as ingestion, mapping, custom, or mastering with merge and match specific settings. This flow has an ingestion step defined as step 1, which can be leveraged with MarkLogic MuleSoft Connector Hub Import Docs operation. To produce our final output, steps 2 onward are called. Mapping is our first transformation, which is then enhanced by our custom step, which does most of the FHIR and unstructured data transformation work. And finally, we have our mastering step, to find records for patients based on similar name. We can define very fine details about what to match on, how to score a potential or definite match, and how to merge those records together when we encounter matches. After running a flow, you can use the Browse Data section of Quick Start to verify your data in both the staging and final databases. You can also perform simple searching and facet filtering to get right to the content of interest. You can verify the outcome of your flow run in the Jobs section of Quick Start as well. Here, you can filter down on specific flow names or job status, as well as the flow execution duration times. And here's a look at the flow we'll be using to ingest and harmonize with MuleSoft. This is the medical history flow, and it maps directly to the medical history entity type that we defined. This is where we will bring in our unstructured text, do some mapping to provide a little more structure to it, and ultimately be able to join it up with our FHIR patient resource view. And this is unstructured plain text. There's nothing really much to map here. What we can work with is the fact that our file names coming in indicate the name of the patient, as well as some clues on how to actually get their member ID or patient ID out of the record itself. So we can use that to actually bring in the data, harmonize it, and begin to join it with our patient view. So now let's have a look at our medical history content. We've mentioned that these are plain text files consisting of lab and office visit notes. They contain no structure internally. However, they do have the patient name and the patient identifier in the file name. Let's have a look at Augustine Delgadillo. His latest entry is from June 4th of this year, and we see that he was recently diagnosed with COVID-19 and acute bronchitis. There are other notes, such as his social history, any known allergies, his current medications, care plans, and assessments. This structure continues throughout the rest of the file to cover his known medical history. This is the content we will be bringing into the medical history entity. The scenario is our electronic medical record source system has been updated with new visit notes, a little over 2,000 entries. These will get staged to S3 to be picked up for ingest orchestration into the data hub. So let's quickly discuss what will happen when we stage our medical history zip file to S3. We have a Mule orchestrate ingestion flow to coordinate all of the ingest work. This is a flow depiction captured from my Anypoint Studio. It works on a scheduler that runs every 5 minutes, calling our list S3 REST endpoint, which was defined and shown earlier in Anypoint Design Center. List S3 gets the list of any changed objects in our bucket, which includes our zip file.
We also store a list of mappings of source files to Data Hub flows using an in-memory object store built into Mule. We then send the zip file and a subsequent REST request to our ingest zip endpoint. Once ingestion completes, it is ready to harmonize. We use our in-memory mappings to help direct the harmonization once we are ready. Here's a look at the list S3 and ingest zip flows. Let's start at the bottom, which is what the list S3 flow underlying the list S3 endpoint looks like. It utilizes the same list S3 RAML spec shown earlier in Design Center. The flow uses the S3 connector list3 operation to look for contents newer than the user-supplied timestamp and just returns a JSON array of any changed objects. At top is what the ingest zip flow underlying the ingest zip endpoint looks like. It too uses a RAML spec defined earlier in Design Center. This is called if any changed S3 objects ready for ingest are found. It uses the S3 connector getObject operation to fetch the zip. The flow then extracts the zip contents using the compression module extract operation. From here, a choice router is introduced, depending whether our contents are text or JSON files. If the zip contains text files like our medical history content, it takes the top route and is ultimately ingested into MarkLogic Data Hub staging database using the hub ingest docs operation. We can gauge success by tracking the logs during processing or checking inside of MarkLogic Query Console or Quick Start for updates. And here's our harmonization orchestration flow. It too works on a scheduler, which runs every 10 minutes, checking our in-memory store for details set by the ingest orchestrator to see what's ready to be processed. If a job is ready, we'll make a REST call over to our V1 Harmonize endpoint to trigger Data Hub to begin the harmonization work. So let's deploy our application to Cloud Hub so we can begin ingesting and harmonizing our medical history data. While that's deploying and starting up, let's go ahead and place our medical history zip file over into the S3 bucket. Let's jump back over to Runtime Manager now and see if our application has successfully deployed. And it looks like it has. As the application is starting up, we can check the logs to see when the data starts flowing into MarkLogic. And we can also jump over to Query Console on MarkLogic to see that our content is starting to flow into the staging database. Checking the logs on Runtime Manager again shows that our harmonization flow for medical history is about to begin. And we now see the job has completed. So let's go check over in Query Console. And let's just quickly check a final record to make sure it conforms to what we're expecting. And now that we've automated the harmonization orchestration, we can return our attention back to harmonizing out Patient 360. And just to give you a glimpse of what that looks like, remember that we do the mapping, but we also do mastering, and this is one of the really important aspects of what Data Hub offers in this architecture, is the ability to find and dedupe similar patients who are the same person based on some criteria and merge them back together. And let's just quickly check a final record to make sure it conforms to what we're expecting. And now that we've automated the harmonization orchestration, we can return our attention back to harmonizing out Patient 360. And just to give you a glimpse of what that looks like, remember that we do the mapping, but we also do mastering, and this is one of the really important aspects of what Data Hub offers in this architecture, is the ability to find and dedupe similar patients who are the same person based on some criteria and merge them back together. And I just want to show you what the final record looks like. So this is the final document structure for our harmonized Patient 360. This is in our envelope model. We can show you the headers that we harmonized out to. This is the metadata about the document. We've also generated a number of RDF triples to get our graphs and relationships expressed. We can see some information about the patient themselves, the conditions that they've had. And here's our patient history. This is the raw text medical history that we ingested. And finally, the final patient fire resource bundle. This features information such as conditions, explanations of benefits, claims, care teams, providers, and what have you. The next steps from here to build out a fully realized FHIR compliant API would be to add the FHIR API RAML definitions that MuleSoft offers. These work with the various numbers of FHIR resource types, including patient, which we just showed you. With this, you could build out flows that further work with MarkLogic search so that our FHIR patient resource bundles are fully searchable. And of course, fetching the actual FHIR content and FHIR document.
So that was a great view of the functionality that MarkLogic provides to support the Patient 360 case. Ken, can you summarize the main points that are important for our customers to remember?
Sure, great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so what you saw was the Data Hub service. And one of the things you saw was the ability to handle lots of different types of data. So whether that's data that's highly structured, whether it's unstructured, that could be doctor's notes and scribblings that are digitally recorded, or everything in between, semi-structured data. That's going to be critical because all of that is information that patients care about. You saw the ability to harmonize and curate that data to essentially make sure that it's of quality. And by harmonization, what we mean is data that's related to the same patient gets put together. Sometimes that's hard to do, but it's critical for this particular mandate. You also saw the ability to look at all of the data. You know, when we harmonize and curate data and assess its quality, we want to see where it came from. We want to be able to see the as-is data as well as the canonical model that we build over time. You saw some mastering in there. Mastering is critical. Are we dealing with different people when we see records that where the name and other information look similar, or are they indeed the same person? The ability to put in business rules to identify how to clean the data. And then the last key point, bringing it all together, is that all of this is in the data platform. So for years, many of you probably heard about ways to do these things where most of the heavy lifting was done outside of the data platform, outside of the database, rules to do mastering somewhere else. But what we do is we put all that capability inside of the database. So now you have this API-driven platform like MuleSoft connecting with MarkLogic, the MarkLogic Data Hub, where those critical data functions are performed in the data layer, and the ability to produce something like we produced here, which is this Patient 360.
I agree, and it's a great way of leveraging the best of the both parts of the platform for modern applications, the modern API-led with the modern data management platform. So I think the last part, we'll hand it back to Clay to show us how everything comes together.
In summary, let's review what we've seen today. We've seen MuleSoft feed a MarkLogic Data Hub with patient data from a myriad of source systems, including provider and payer data. We've seen the MarkLogic Data Hub deliver canonicalized and mastered FHIR resource views of patient data built from structured and unstructured data sets alike. We've seen MarkLogic being leveraged for search and data service APIs, and we've seen MuleSoft expose standards-compliant FHIR REST APIs for our patients, accessing FHIR patient and bundle resources from the MarkLogic Data Hub. This helps us meet our use case of allowing our patients to be able to access their health information, including comprehensive views that offer provider visits and lab note views of all known medical history. It also helps payers and providers be able to meet the deadlines for the ONC Cures Act final rule, avoiding fines for noncompliance.
Well, thank you, Clay. That was great. Really, really good demo. I like the way everything came together. ONC Cures, FHIR data, making patient data available. Dan, really great working with you guys. Any final words for the folks listening?
So from the MuleSoft side, the healthcare space has obviously been evolving so quickly. I'd really encourage anybody on the recording this video to go to the MuleSoft.com site and look up our healthcare accelerator. We just released a couple of weeks ago. It has a number of assets to help develop additional FHIR compliant APIs, such as those that were demoed by Clay earlier.
Yeah, no, great point. And that's a key point for folks to remember is this isn't just two products that happen to be in the healthcare space. We've worked together on this. We have a MuleSoft connector from MarkLogic. We both have done work with large healthcare agencies. I think you know our track record, you know MuleSoft's track record. We have experience in this space. So we encourage you if this is a problem that you need solving, and for those of you in the healthcare industry, it is being mandated. Please reach out to us, and we look forward to telling you about what we can do. Thanks for attending. Thanks for watching the video, and enjoy the rest of the MarkLogic World videos.